Welcome to our January 2019 breakfast.
My name's Nelson Mellis. This is Mike Perloff. You know us from the club. Yeah, sorry. I should know this by now. You know us as long-term members. Actually, we were people to help start the club many, many years ago, and it's a pleasure to be members of this club. We're up to about 130 people. That's fantastic. Let me get away from that. Yeah. Mike and myself, back in the October, November period of time, decided to go to Israel on a program called Sarel, which is Volunteers for Israel. And I'll get into the definitions of Sarel and et cetera in a second. But let me start out with a story. When my father passed away many years ago, my grandfather came over to the house, my mom's house, and he would wake me up early in the morning to go to services. And at night, and of course I hated it, but still I had to go with him. He had to say the prayers for my father. Now on one of the trips, one of the walks to the synagogue, we started talking about Israel. And why is Israel there? What's the history behind Israel? So my grandfather, Morris Mellis, said to me back in 1897, there was a Zionism conference in Switzerland. He was in Russia at the time, and he was actually one of the delegates, but he couldn't get out of Russia to go there. And he was saying in the history of the Jewish people, we all have the same history, 3,000 years ago. But yet, since we're all in different countries, we're all in different situations, our history in the future and our destiny in the future is going to be a little bit different as Jewish people. But with the state of Israel, which by the way, there's always been a state of Israel for me. Ever since I was born, Israel existed, and I suspect for a lot of other people here. We have a common destiny, a common history, and that continues as Jews together. With that said, Mike and myself were sitting in, I think it was the Sage Diner in one of our breakfasts, and Mike's talking about it 6 times or 7 times he's been in Israel on a program called Sarel, again, Volunteers for Israel. And he was telling me about these fantastic experiences. Some of the pictures you'll see, maybe one time when he was on a tank, and I don't remember what you were doing on that tank, but you were there, probably fixing the treads. He actually did something valuable, something worthwhile, other than just writing a check to support Israel, which we all do, which is worthwhile too. But it's a program where you actually work on a military base, an IDF base, and you do something to support the soldiers, to support the people of Israel, to support the Jewish people. And it's something you do to allow the reservists and the active duty people to do other activities. So our program was started approximately 32 years ago. Its funding comes partly from donations and partly from the Israeli government, so I think it's their IDF offices. They've had, maybe 7,500 people in the 32 years participating in the program. What's the majority number of people what country does the majority number of people come from? Anybody have an answer for that?
USA.
US, you said?
USA. Russia. Germany. France. China. Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. They come from a lot of different countries. It's not the USA. Majority at this point come from France. And a lot of those people from France, even now, come to see if they should settle in Israel. Are the majority of the people Jewish that come to work on Sarel? Yes. The answer is yes. But the numbers we've been given is 35% are not Jewish. The ages of the people. We had one lady, I think she was 84 years old. She's in better shape than me. She was lifting these medical bags that must have been 75 pounds. She wouldn't let anybody help her. Fantastic. Or you have some young people that are just going to Israel and seeing if they could help out. Age limits. There's no age limit. There is some physical requirements that you have to have. I'm sure they have some trips for disability, people with disabilities. But what they do is they get the volunteers together, and they usually put the ones that speak English together, the ones that speak French, and the other languages together. In our group, and we were there for approximately 2 weeks, I had to leave early, and they arranged that for me, and I restricted Mike because I had to leave early. Because a Jewish troop was killed in Afghanistan, and his mom called me and asked me to be at the memorial service. This particular Jewish troop person, his wife had they had a 3-year-old child, and his wife was 7 months pregnant. I've seen the wife since then. She's doing well. He had 2 daughters now, but it's extremely difficult. That's happening all the time. Okay, so we're in Israel. We arrive at the airport, and I'm not going to get into your presentation. And Mike and myself are going to share this presentation, obviously. I didn't know what to expect. But before we got there, Mike was saying they need specific supplies. And that's what these 2 slides are talking about. And you heard about this. We're actually asking for donations to support the vest, gloves, and other things. Sorry. From the standpoint of being in the U.S. military for 32 years, all I had to do is get on the website in my last part of my military career and just order stuff off the website using the government charge card. I could have ordered as many flak jackets, gloves as I wanted to, as long as I didn't exceed my appropriations, which was a lot of money. That's not the case in Israel. I was just flabbergasted, or whatever word you want to use, that the Israelis don't have all the equipment they need to go into combat. And an example, and tell me to shut up, Mike, if I'm getting into your presentation. One day, we went into Tel Aviv. It was Friday. I think it was a Friday morning. And they arranged for us, as well as other people, to donate some of these supplies there. 4 young troops that had just come out of, I think they said Syria, that were in recon duty in Syria. They all looked the same, by the way. Same skin color, about the same height. Israeli IDF troops, combat troops, were over on the side. We couldn't take any pictures of them because that was a part of security requirements. You can't take pictures. But they were just enthusiastic. They were fantastic. They loved the stuff we were handing out to them. It was one of those situations where I just didn't believe it at first that they needed this equipment. And other things, stuff like for the M16s. And they are using M16s and not the Uzis for the most part. The barrels needed some covers on them. They were fighting over them, these 4 troops. And we knew a lot of things were happening with them. Not only going in Syria, we knew at that time that there was missiles coming over from Gaza into Israel. They were all in combat duty. Message here is, they need our help, and this is one of the best things we ever did and actually supported them. And again, I didn't believe it was necessary. One of the troops walked up to me, he's Air Force, not one of these 4 troops, so there happened to be an Air Force person there, and somebody said I was a retired Air Force, and he gave me a shirt. This is an Air Force shirt. It's for combat Air Force. I don't even really know what it means, but this is something I have pride in. I'm going to keep for a long time. I'll wear it once in a while, but not too often, because I don't want to destroy it. Okay, with that said.
Can you show the shirt again?
Sure. Okay, I'm the only one they gave this shirt to.
He was only wearing one.
He didn't take it off his back. But I'm proud of that. So again, the message is, they need our help for certain supplies. They need our support from a moral standpoint. And we're Jews, and we should be supporting them anyhow, because the state of Israel needs a lot of support at this point. Now let me turn it over to Mike, and I think we're both going to be talking about the slides coming up.
Thank you, Nelson. Nelson just couldn't believe it. He really didn't believe it when I told him that I was asked if I could help raise money for equipment for soldiers in Israel. Eventually, we raised enough for it, and thanks to some of you, 15 bulletproof vests. Well done. You would not believe. And I clap for you. You would not believe how appreciative these young soldiers were. There was also some soldiers who had also just come back, believe it or not, from recon in Gaza. And I believe there was one sailor and one Air Force fella. And it's unconscionable, isn't it, that outsiders have to provide equipment, but they do. We do. We will continue to. Right? And there's more need, always more need. So if you feel so inclined, let me know, and I'll put you in touch with the proper people. Nelson, do you have the, oh, here it is. And this is our presentation. You'll notice that we have here three different symbols. Sorel, which means service for Israel, us and the Israeli Defense Force. If you're interested in the United States, if you're going through regular channels, you would go to the Volunteers for Israel website and they would have all the information you need, including a frequently asked questions section. What kind of things do you do when you're there? Supply, repair, maintenance, logistics, just about anything a reservist would do that doesn't put you in harm's way or needs special training. It could be any kind of job: cleanup, painting, machine work, working with instruments, anything that takes more or less simple and quick training. One time I was on a base where they stored tanks, and we had to get on top of the tanks and inside the tanks and look for any tears because they had dehumidifiers inside. I worked in a motor pool another time when we had the camouflage tarps that we had to work with and check. We ended up having this email sent out to everyone, I guess it was about 2 months before Nelson and I left, to see if anyone else wanted to go with us at that time. You'll notice at the bottom left, that was the time I was working up near the Lebanese border. We were clearing brush in front of observation posts. Then we got to Israel finally. Well, we had a couple days before the program started, so there's this friend of mine that lives in Modine. Now, I was in Modine in 2001, the first time that I did this program. It has grown so that if my life depended on it, I couldn't find where I was staying. It is now close to 100,000 people. What's the national bird of Israel? They don't call it the building crane for no reason. I never saw so many building cranes, and that's just looking in one direction. We took a walk in Anaba Park. Amazing place. We just happened to see it. We didn't even look for it, just happened to see it. It has huge statues. You can see the kids playing. And then on Sunday...
Well, let me interrupt you a second.
Yes, Nelson.
I've heard from some people that they're afraid to go to Israel. They're afraid of the missiles coming over, rockets coming over, etc. We walked in this park, and there was kids playing like over here. There was all kinds of things happening. Nobody's afraid of anything, and there was nothing happening. I think it's safer in Israel, and you hear that from other people too, than in going to New York. It was just a pleasure to be out there, and the weather was fantastic. 78 degrees, 80 degrees, and people just enjoying themselves. And hopefully there's some pictures on Tel Aviv too, when we actually went to the beach. Talk to you.
Now Modine, by the way, is about halfway between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And the interesting thing is that it's actually now a conglomeration of 3 different municipalities. One of them is not recognized by the European Union because it was across the Green Line, they say. Well, everybody meets, no matter where you are in Israel or coming from overseas, you meet at Ben Gurion Airport. And that was our group, some of the people that we worked with. And you're met by what's basically like our concierge, guides, camp counselors, our madrachot. And you see these cute little girls, they're the ones in charge of us. And the woman who's got the microphone system, amplifying system, she's the one in charge of all English and French speaking groups. We have transportation that they give to us to take us to the bases. That's the group. We were at Tel Shomer, and it has many little bases on it. One of them is a medical supply base. And that's our group. You can see myself standing there, and over near the flagpole in the back is Nelson. God forbid he's got a smile.
Oh, that's not going to happen.
But do take note. Take note. Look at these people. You would fit in there. You can't say I'm too old. Just no matter what you're doing now, there's people older there now.
Okay, so when you check into your base, what they do is they throw a whole bunch of uniforms in boxes, and they tell you to find a size that fits you. The hats are given to you later on. Yeah, but it's exciting. And you know these people are there to help Israel, so you're not fighting to get the uniforms, but you're pushing them away a little bit to get your size. It's exciting. And Mike's going to talk about the building, I'm sure, that we lived in.
This truly is luxurious accommodations. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Mike,
Yes,
you know what's saying over there on the building?
you'll see in a moment.
Mike, you
Yes,
No, what it doesn't say.
it says volunteers.
That's-
Yes, and thank you. By the way, this is one of our IDF soldiers, long time ago. And this is one of our cots, and I'm telling you, this truly is the Waldorf Astoria. This is 6 stars compared to some of the places I've been in. But we're not going for luxury, are we? We're going to help and to make a difference.
And again, Mike told me before we got there that to expect the worst conditions possible. And they were just equivalent to about the 1970s when I first joined the Air Force. But that only lasted a short time. The Air Force improved, and U.S. Air Force. It was something to accept, that they're not the best conditions at all, but we had it pretty good there.
Yes, we did. Okay. They actually, if you went with your wife or husband, guess what? You're going to be on different floors. This was the sign at our entrance.
That was a benefit. And there was about 5 couples there.
Well, we got welcomed by the area commander, not the base commander, but the area commander. And the young lady in the middle is our guidance counselor, so to speak, our madracha. And the young lady sitting on the bench is a person from Budapest, Hungary, who speaks English, so she was in our group. After every breakfast, there's flag salute, news, and assignments if there's any changes for us. That's our work area. And to be more specific, that's where I think Nelson was or I was. What's inside? What you can see is it's arranged to be able to fill up and double check and triple check what's the contents of containers for field hospitals. You can't make mistakes. As was said to me and to Nelson, take your time. If we make a mistake, a soldier could die. We took our time.
So we had 25 of these bags lined up in long benches. And like Mike's saying, we had to fill them up. A certain way, everything went into a certain locations. And those things were extremely important to express to us, because just think about a troop in the field, wounded. The medic needs to get to the right equipment at the right time, quickly to take care of that troop. By the way, when that stuff was loaded, it had to weigh at least 90 pounds, maybe 100 pounds. It was a lot in there. It was a lot of stuff to put in. We stuffed everything in there we possibly could.
Sometimes we do small work where we sit there and prepare things to be put into these containers. I'm working with some tubes that are used during surgery. Nelson's...
What were you doing with those tubes? I'm sorry.
Time and place, Nelson, time and place. And here, what my job was is I had to seal up in these vacuum-packed bags different little pieces of equipment and label them. And again, that shows you some more of the bags being packed. Sometimes they ask you to schlep around boxes. But look, that's not hard at all, really. It just looks big. And if you take a look, we were working at a loading platform trying to separate things out. And look, there's no young cockers here, are there? I mean, it's folks like us. You can do it. And sometimes, yes, there's the grunge jobs. But before I get into some of the rest of it, I think Nelson started out by saying anybody can write a check. That's right. There's no feeling like putting your hands on to help and then being thanked right away. Every evening they had activities for us. Nelson, would you comment on some of them, please?
They tried to teach us Hebrew in every one of those activities. For me, it's difficult to learn Hebrew, and I know for other people, a similar situation. They also talked about the history of Israel, some of the heroes in Israel, some of the people that came from the United States during the 1948 war in order to help with the Air Force, with the other activities. So it was a great variety of activities. One of the most important thing is all the people in our group, and I think it was like 30 people in our group, we all got together in one room. And we discussed different aspects of what was the subject that night. We got to know each other. There's also the other aspect too, where a lot of us would meet outside at the gazebo before dinner, sometimes after breakfast, And we just discussed what we do in real life, why we're here. And it became a social activity. It was really impressive to me.
That can even extend way beyond your service and helping during any particular time. When I've traveled a bit, I've actually visited with people in New Zealand and Australia and all over that I met on army bases. We not just only had the person from Budapest, we had someone from New Zealand also in this particular group.
Who was not Jewish, and I didn't know that until all of a sudden she says it to me in the second week. And she just is the head of the New Zealand delegation to get Jews, to get everybody to go to Israel on this program. And she's been there about 20 times.
So when you're not working or just sitting around doing nothing, and when you have your activities, sooner or later you get into the regular routine. The meals, they were actually pretty good. And of course, everything's kosher. Not even a question, everything's kosher. And for the most part, it is good. Is it good on every base? No. On this one, it was very good.
Actually, I felt healthier, and I think Mikey said the same thing, because the food was literally the best kind of food you could eat. No ingredients that shouldn't be in there. It was just all vegetables and all kind of things that you really wouldn't eat at home, but it was healthy. I felt better.
Well, the next slide's going to show you something that we did when we had a lot of time to kill, and we had some leftover containers. We were able to stack them pretty high before they fell down. But I did this one so you could get an idea of what the facility is like that you eat in. You could notice there's modern chairs, not modern tables, very clean, airy, open. Not every base is like that.
And we ate with the troops, and that's important.
And you really do have to take care of your own laundry and things. But what do you do on the weekends? Now remember, they're weekends. Aren't our weekends. Friday, Saturday is the weekend. Sunday's just like a regular work day. Okay? And you can see here we are in Tel Aviv. Now how do you get from the base? They arrange transportation to wherever it is you're trying to get to. Most people will go to Tel Aviv. Also, there are places and times that they can arrange discounts at different hotels. It is very hard to get rooms in Tel Aviv. There's a shortage in Tel Aviv of about 5,000 rooms. Such that Nelson and I, believe it or not, on a Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, had to stay in 3 different places. Not a hardship, really, but it was an adventure. Now, if you've never been to Tel Aviv and walking on the promenade on a Saturday, you're missing, there's a part, they're dancing. And Eli, you want to say anything about that?
Yes.
That's one of the best thing my wife likes to do. And it's not only in Tel Aviv, it's also in Haifa, in what they call the Krayot, is the little towns above Haifa, between Haifa and Nahariya. And down south of Tel Aviv, that's everybody does, mostly, people that retired. And some young people too, they all love to dance, and that's what they're doing. Look at this. And a lot of cheating going on after this.
I couldn't figure out when people actually, it worked when we went to Tel Aviv, actually. There were so many young people and middle-aged people also on the beach on Sunday morning, for example, before we had to get the bus, who literally were on the beach enjoying themselves, surfing, running. It was like a pleasure resort. And I always wondered when they actually did work for a living.
Yes, and another thing is that I've never seen it before, but there's a combination game, I don't really know what they call it. It's volleyball, beach volleyball, and soccer. They actually are playing volleyball without using their hands. It's very interesting. There's usually 2 or 3 games going on. I was able to get all the way down to the Baha'i Gardens in Haifa and visit some people. You may remember some of the shliachs that we've had here in the community. Lior Applebaum, anybody remember him? Okay, Udi Ben Sadia, and what was the other one? The one who was the artillery. Nachum. Malcolm Katz. I spoke to or saw each one of them, and it's good for both of us. It's always nice. And Udi actually took time and spent time with Nelson and myself in Tel Aviv. And we took some of the tours that were available. Very interesting. Well, there we go. I'd like to ask one question. How about joining us next time? Thank you.
Okay, so questions and answers, but let me start out by talking about the cost. Yes, we had to pay for airfare there. We had to pay for the hotels when we were in Tel Aviv on the weekend. But the barracks obviously was free, the food was free, okay, electricity, toilets, all that stuff that came with it, the way you would think would come, all free. Okay, but the obligation on our part was to work, and every one of those people in our group worked hard. Yeah, from about 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock, sometimes even longer than that, because we knew we had a need. We were working on medical supplies. Some of the supplies you didn't see there were the backpacks that the medics actually carried in. Again, those things were heavy, and we had to load them up with about 75 pounds worth of stuff. Okay, then we had packed them into cartons, and again, that got heavy. Pack up the cartons with the metal rods around them so they wouldn't fall apart, and they went straight to the front. We knew they were valuable. And at one point, when we heard about the rockets coming in from Gaza, at least I was, I'm not sure if your group was, we were told we had to have 25 of those done, those backpacks, by a certain time, because we knew they were going right to the front. So it was worthwhile. It was something actually we knew was something we weren't playing around with. Please go ahead.
With your experience in the Air Force, were they interested in discussing any of that or having something for the Air Force?
Let me talk about the Israeli attitude. No, they were not interested. That's the answer to your question. They think they have the best way of doing things. I don't like that attitude, but it's the way it is.
But why?
Maybe it's their environment. They're always at war. Yeah, they always have to try to be better than somebody else. It's the way they are. You could talk to them and you could see when they're not paying attention. It's just their approach.
Let me just add something, Bernie. Close your ears, Eli. Israelis look like us. They generally sound like us. Trust me, they don't perceive and process as we do. Seriously. So there's times that things seem so obvious that they'll fight you tooth and nail that you're wrong. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. Talking about the new F-35s coming in, the Israelis want to modify it according to what they want. The U.S., which is okay, yeah, and we'll do it here in the United States. But the United States might have a better way of making that modification. They won't listen. And that's part of the discussions going on now between Lockheed and the Israeli government. Right now, it's just the way they are.
But that seems unusual for people that are willing to try to progress.
Let's go back to this equipment that we actually furnished to them. The U.S. would not send their troops into combat, and there's been an exception or two, without the best equipment possible. The Israelis do that. And the example is the Lebanese war. I think it was the second Lebanese war, when so many Israelis went into Lebanon, they were killed off because they didn't have the correct equipment. They thought it would only be a couple-day war. They didn't even have the right food to supply them, the boots or things of that type. It's something that has to change, in my opinion.
Suppose you got influence from the people here in our country that have influence on them.
Nah.
That doesn't work?
Doesn't work.
You're applying our perspectives.
I'm annoyed because you and I have major experience in the service. I mean, I was in the artillery for 17 years, and I don't understand why they would take our advice or take our knowledge.
They're Israelis. That's all I can say. They're Israelis. No, it's not.
It's a different environment. I can't justify it. It's just the way they are.
Yes.
How do they determine, like, the work that they assign you to? For instance, it sounds like you're not doing busy work. You're doing work that really they feel critical. How do they determine what kind of work would be, you would be best suited for?
I have no idea. My guess is that because it's usually not run by Israelis that do the determination, that they would do it the way you or I would. Now, keep in mind that Nelson was mentioning about these 75-pound bags. Well, they're not going to ask some guy who can't do it or with a bad back to do that. They're not going to ask some little lady to do that. You saw the pictures. Let me ask, just in theory, you're not signing anywhere, how many people might conceivably be willing to do that in the next year or so? Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so next time you get an email, respond, all right?
It's well worth going. I felt fantastic. Fantastic. It was my
Rich?
first time.
Two questions. Do they allow cell phones on business? Private, personal cell phones?
Yes, they do.
And do they have daily services, religious services?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on the Israeli attitude. I'm quite familiar with Israel, family, I've been there many times. From my experience, part of it, what I call Israeli arrogance, comes from the fact that this is what they've said. This is what they've said. They had to create that country. They had to defend that country for survival, right? Nobody came in there to do it for them. And so they've taken the attitude that don't tell us how to take care of our country. And I believe that's what it's all about. It's an arrogance that they've become, serious people.
I think you're right about that. Okay, and I have no problems with that. I've been to many countries in the Middle East and all over the world. And whenever the U.S. went in there trying to tell them how to run their military, their civilian, we were wrong. Vietnam, Iraq, everywhere. So you have to let the people run the country the way they want, even if we know it's wrong. It eventually comes out better for the Israelis.
Anyone else?
Yeah, how do we know it's wrong?
It depends on what you grade it by. The United States usually grades the successes by the number of people killed.
We're not killed.
Or not killed on the U.S. side.
So if the suggestions come from our State Department or military experts, it will be rejected because the country was nearly exterminated of its Jewish population twice by our expertise from our government agencies and experts. And military electronics were received by that country in good faith and paid for, and found to be bugged to give information to our State Department and military experts on more than one occasion. And I know this, and I know Nelson, you probably know this because of your more closeness to the Air Force than my time in military. My time's just about people in U.S. intelligence, So they do not want our advice.
Okay, let me add something that just happened last week. Iron Dome missile batteries are being sold to the United States now to replace the Patriots missile batteries. Because the Iron Dome has been proven in combat to be the best equipment that we could possibly have. It's being moved to Romania, Poland. Hopefully it'll be used in the United States as a defensive measure against the Russians and the Chinese. We are learning in the United States. Israelis sometimes have better ideas. I think they have to learn we have better ideas too.
But they won't take our equipment without modification.
That's correct.
Bob?
That attitude really is not solely the Israeli attitude. I mean, I worked for a company that was based out of Munich, Germany. And we would try to help them do things which they screwed up on a regular basis, cost them literally billions of dollars, and their attitude was, we're in charge. Shut up and sit down.
Ach du Liebe.
So it's not any different. It's the proprietary idea that this is mine, you take care of yours, stay out of my face.
I agree. I've seen that elsewhere too. Okay, I don't want to belittle this situation where the Israeli attitude, because we're working together with the Israelis. The only allies that the Israelis really have is the United States, and we have to continue working. The program that Mike and myself were on, I wasn't sure what to expect initially, but I really was impressed by the help that we received from the Israelis. For example, when I had to come back early, I thought I'd have to take a bus to Tel Aviv airport. A couple Israeli reservists, I think they were not wearing uniforms, but I know they were in the military. They told me, get in my car. They took me right to the airport. Didn't even have to stop for the guard gates because they happened to know that person at the gate. And just we went right through. So they're great people. There are people. And there's no question they have their own way of doing things.
Do they have like an orientation where before you go, they give you, you know, enough information?
You want to talk about that?
Well, he wouldn't know because, what's that way they say it? I know a guy.
Yeah.
You're supposed to go through the VFI, Volunteers for Israel, in the United States. You get interviewed, you have to get letters of reference. They don't take anyone. But I know people. So I just made a phone call to Israel, and even though it was too late, and I got Nelson, and we went. So the proper procedure is to go to that website, VFI for Israel. That answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes, Dick.
Mike, when did you go this year? I mean, last year, rather?
We went in near the end of the middle to end of October to near the beginning middle of November.
And how was the weather, basically?
Beautiful.
Good time of year.
Oh, one thing else, if you want to get into shape, again, it's not only the food, but 6:30 in the morning, I think we both walked. 6:30 in the morning before breakfast, had to be 4 or 5 miles with a group of other people. Got back for breakfast. You didn't have to do it, but this is what we were doing. I was in the best shape I was in for several years, and I think you were too. It felt good.
Not better than now.
Yeah, who knows?
But the other thing to keep in mind is some people would be saying, 6:30 in the morning? You already got a 7-hour time difference you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So you have to make the adjustment anyway.
Yeah, and plus it allowed you to get into the showers before the other guys got into the showers. And there was only 3 showers, and there's like 15, 16 guys trying to get in there.
Marty?
During what months is this thing available? Was it
Year round.
It's all year round?
Yeah.
They have several other programs too. They have a program called VFI Plus, which involves also some trips. So you deal, I believe, with Guild Travel. And there's 3 or 4 different kinds of programs. There's 1-week programs, 2-week programs, 3-week programs. And yes, there are some people who, when they complete it, they'll take a week off and then do it again and ask for a different base. I've been everywhere from the Gaza Strip to the Lebanese border. And the bases are all different. The people, believe it or not, are different because in the north, most of the bases are manned by the Druze, which are not Jewish. And they're everywhere. They're very appreciative, very, very. I would say in general, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they believe they're isolated, and the Israelis feel that they're on their own.
Yeah.
So when they see people from around the world, it's a big morale booster.
I know a guy I spoke to last week who's actually going on Sorrel for 3 weeks, and then he's going on the Jewish War Veterans mission to Israel. He doesn't have to take the plane back again. He's going to be right there for another 2 weeks. And we met one guy, I can't remember his name, who's been there for 5 or 6 months. He gets free room and board, and he works on the Israeli base. Of course, he's not married, or he might have been married and got a divorce. And he's from Philadelphia, by the way, and he's just making it a habit of being there. He goes home to Philadelphia for a while, then he goes back to Israel. He tours, and he has a girlfriend in Israel too. That helps. So there's all kinds of ways to work the program.
Well, if there's no more,
He was interesting, though.
yes, if there's no more questions, thank you very much.